Welcome, we're doing the poppy today and I am just getting some colors ready. We're going to use Madder Lake Deep, we're going to use Permanent Red Light, and I'm just using different variations of these mixtures, Quinacridone Rose, and I have an orange as well. So I'm starting with the back flower petals. There's when you look at the design of the flower, it sort of the petals that form a circle, and that's the seed pods that are in the center. It's quite a distinct circle color. So these are the petals that are on the other side of the circle, and we're going to keep them nice and light and airy looking. So we'll just put a nice light coat on those, and then we'll just fill in the other petals. And you'll be able to tell as I go along here that the darker areas will get filled in right away, because really those are the areas that we're going to continue to put layers and layers and layers on. So you start right away with mapping out the tones, and there you can see where I mean the flower is quite dark and vibrant. The petals are quite deep red, but only those that are really facing us. The other ones really light up because they're on the other side. They're more open to the light. So that's the whole idea of the design is trying to get across. So I'm just making sure there's lots of pigment in there. So the pigment is what makes up your paint. So you know, the more pigment you have on your brush, and I mean really you know what it's like to load it up really thick, that's a lot of pigment. It's not necessarily a lot of paint, but it's a lot of pigment, if that makes sense. So I'm softening in the darker shadows on the far petals. As you just saw, I put some water in there, but right now I'm working on the petals that are close by and on this side, and I still even have a couple of petals to paint yet. So we'll keep the edges of the petals really sort of loose and lacy, not too many intricate variations, but just sort of loose lace. And then here I'm putting in a really dark red petal, and that's where I want that pigment to really stand out. And just continuing with the up and down lines to make that look as if there is some shape to it. And then putting some dark is sort of like what you call negative painting, where you put the dark behind the light. So at the top I started to go along the bottom of the petal that is far away from me, and basically it curves around the top of the petal that is close to me. So there's a little bit of negative painting there. And I think that's what really brings out this design, is that those different tones, you know, is just keep working away at it. There I go, putting the darker into the center and a little bit at the top, and then you just sort of blend that in with more water. Those two different places. So I'm going to take some water now and sort of make some designs in those petals. I've got the pigment in there, and I can sort of manage the moisture that is in there as to what I can do. So you want it to blend, but you also want it to look like there's lines there. So there's sort of just continuing to work as the paper dries, and you know, just remembering that you can add more water if you want, but you know, you can only work on an area for so long, and then it starts to break down. So you do have to that's where you start to sort of think, okay, I think I need to stop what I'm doing. It looks okay the way it is, because if you keep going with watercolor, it will sort of damage the print. So you have to capture that look. So I'm just, as you can see, picking up a little bit of color with my smaller brush. And sorry I didn't talk about the brushes. Usual ones, I have a round one, I have a straight edge one, flat. And they're on the small side. I'll have to have a look at that. So you can see the difference between the back of that petal and the inside of it is quite light on the inside of it. So that was the look I was trying to get across is that they look light on the inside. Just helping things look like they're round by the way that you put the light and the dark work on it. The shadows. You just have to go around and work on each petal individually. The darker I make those ones on the other side, the darker I have to come in the front. But I do like the process of putting pigment on and then lifting it off to bring those highlights forward. So Remembrance Day for me always brings back memories of my childhood, going to the ceremonies and listening to my dad play the last post. He was so good at it. And now I'm going to do a little bit more detail in the petals with the outline and the delicate lines that are part of the petal. I'm just going to blend that all together. I don't want to bring the color down too much, but I don't want it to be, so I get a little smaller brush there and just keep those lines awake and alive. And I just found that that little bit of orange really helped with this area to make a little more of a light pocket. And using the permanent red, I think, is really what was down at the bottom more so. It's a little bit more your poppy color. So there's a little sort of platform, as I was saying, at the bottom of this circle that holds this flower. Not all flowers have a circle, but this is a pretty distinct circle from what I remember. And so you want to make it look like it's a circle that the flower is sitting on. So the space underneath the flat, you want to have a little platform there. So just make sure that that is there. So just going to finish up here, and then we're going to do some colors for the stems. We're going to mix some Sap Green together, some Dusk Green, and sometimes I add a little bit of yellow. If you want a little bit more of a sage color, then you can add a little bit more bluish green, and just come up with a green that you like. There's quite a few different shades in this one and tones, and I tried to make it look like the ones closer in were a little bit darker, and I actually add a third one to this, so you can see the template did not have the third one, but just sort of felt like it was missing something. So I decided to put another one through there, and I just sort of watched where I put that third one so that it looked like it made sense to me to fill in a space. And so I'm just adding a little bit of shadow and shading to the stems, which don't really need too much, just a little bit on the right usually. I'm trying to make the light, I think, more on the left. And these little pods, they have a couple of different textures to them. Initially I went through and just sort of did little spots. They look like they have spots, and they also have lines that go parallel to the end. And there I was just working on the platform I was talking about underneath the flower. You want to make sure that you have it dry before you start putting green paint into the red. But you can see I've got a couple of different techniques on the pods, or sorry, the buds. I guess those are the buds. So I have the flower pod on the left, so it's the little still has the flower yet to bloom, and then the one on the right is the seed pod where the seeds have already formed. It's like a little shaker, little black seeds. And what I'm doing is I've got a toothpick. I'm wetting down about 3 inches of the stem, and then I'm going along with the toothpick and pulling that paint out to make it look like it's got a bunch of little hairs. And it just takes a little bit of time to go through each stem and do a little bit at a time without making it look like there's sections. So you sort of have to help it blend from one section to another. But you want to also make little lines in the center of the stem to make it look like there's tiny little hairs coming towards you. So just sort of a few crisscrosses and a few dots, and it will look like the whole stem is covered with hair, not just the outsides. So that's how you can make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'm just working on that stem and maybe just going a little bit lighter on the hairs at the top of the stem. As you know, things are a little bit more fragile maybe at the tips rather than lower down. But I looked at this and it felt to me like it was missing something, so I ended up putting in another stem. And if you want to do that, what I would suggest is getting out a pencil and making sure that you draw it in where you want it. But I'm pretty good at visualizing, and I'm just sort of looking at how I could make that happen with the stems as well, because I wanted it to look like it made sense. So I put one stem there, and then I brought it up like that, and it sort of fills in that space and just crosses one other stem. So then I just have to make that look like it makes sense. So I'm making it another flower bud, and where I'll be able to finish it off with a little bit of red paint, making it look like the petals are still inside the bud. And I'm doing the stem just a little bit lighter because it is in the back, but I'm still putting the hairs on it, and it's quite delicate looking at the top. And I think that's what makes this look a little bit more realistic, because it's delicate looking. And just a little bit darker in the center. And these stems to me have to sort of be organized for my eyes to be happy with it. So I'm just working out what's behind and what's in front. And I think it just sort of gives it a little bit more stability there when you pay attention to how things look on all corners. So for this first poppy that I did, I actually made 3 of them. This one I used a plastic toothpick. I had some old ones, and I put them in my painting desk and figured I'd use them one day for something. But I prefer the wooden toothpicks to do this, because the plastic ones really didn't hold up very well. But the wooden ones did. And of course they were the bigger wooden ones. But you could try anything like even a little tiny screwdriver or hair pick or something. You can use a lot of different tools to make a lot of different effects with your painting. So basically just going through each stem, 2 or 3 inches of paint, and then doing it with the toothpick. I didn't find it tedious. In fact, I found that the picture really came alive when I started to do this. It doesn't matter what your flower looks like, but it's the background and the support of the flower in your picture that makes a big difference, pleasing to the eye. So it's that composition, it's the details, it's, I don't know, for me, I like to make things look at least a little bit realistic. And I used a little bit more of the green to paint the the flower bud. Ended up putting a little bit of a red in there as well. It must not have been very wet. I think they did blend together a little bit, and I like the look of that. Now this is how you can easily fix too much paint on that paper. I made a little bit of a swipe and I got some red paint down below the flower, and I really liked the way the flower was looking and I wanted to preserve it, so I just waited till it was all dry before I went back in again. But you know, just putting clean water and mopping it up with a Kleenex really helped the tissue. And here I am just starting out with a darker stem for the flower now, just sort of anchoring it a little bit more in the picture, and using the pick to make the little hairs all around it. And I really like the way that this effect works, so I hope that you find it helpful as well. And yeah, just pay attention to the composition of how many stems you think you might need. I just felt like it needed more height because poppies are tall, and but it's sort of fun to put the two different pods as well as you know, the flower buds in as well. Just try to make your design unique to you. I did you know, sketch this from what I saw on my online, but it is my design, so I feel, you know, I'm sort of getting out of the habit of not doing that. I'm trying to make more my designs be mine, you know what I mean? So I hope you do the same. Just putting a few little details. The pods, as I mentioned, had little spots as well as lines, so just trying to give them texture and real life attributes so that they have a chance to sort of give the eye that knowledge of what they are. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Decided to go back into the flower, add a little bit more detail here. I really like the way this one turned out, and as I said, it's been a joy to live this energy of the poppy and what it means. I really love that I have these memories. So I will bid you good night and farewell till the next time.